Welcome to the first episode of the Manning Up video show, a show dedicated to local sports, AFL, horse racing, cricket, basically anything we can talk about. We're going to start off the show by introducing our first guest, a bit of a local legend around these areas. I sent him an email asking him to outline and send me some of his statistics of his life, and I received an email with 4 pages of attachments. So I knew right then I was in a bit of trouble, but this man is synonymous with local football. He played 70 VFA games for Williamstown in the VFA, including 2 grand final appearances. But it's at Glenroy where this man became an absolute legend. 2 flags, 1 in A grade and 1 in B grade. He's a 3-time Best and Fairest winner at the Glenroy Football Club, including winning the competition Best and Fairest award in 1995. He was twice runners-up in the same award. But it's his post-football career where he has really made his mark at the Glenroy Football Club. He's been the junior coordinator for 10 years, and he's been president since 2017, including being the president of the premiership winning side for the Glenroy Football Club. He also coached, he left this off his CV, can you believe this? He's also coached the club for 4 years. Maybe he's tried to erase that from his mind. I was lucky enough to be assistant coach for a couple of those years. He's been awarded the best clubman, not surprisingly, but I think his greatest honour, but you'd have to ask him, is to be awarded life member of the Glenroy Football Club. Murray Nilsson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashley, I think. Bit of a drive-by there. Thanks, mate. By the way, there's more than 4 attachments. You might want to go back to your computer. Thanks for having me on, mate. The inaugural guest, and if things don't go any better than you setting up your Facebook page, it might be your final guest too, mate. So we'll see how it goes. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, look, it hasn't been a great start. I won't lie. We've even had a few dramas trying to get this organised, but we'll see how we go. All right, let's get straight into it. First, in the last couple of days, the All-Australian team has been announced. I was a bit disappointed with some of the selections, to be honest, but all of the players are deserving, but it's just a bit of a controversy. Some of the players have left out. Have you had any chance to look at some of those, the players?
I've had a quick look, Ash. As well stated, you're very much all over the AFL stuff, but I mean, as a Carlton supporter, Jacob Wiedering seemed to be a glaring omission for mine. My biggest problem with the All-Australian selection process is, does anyone know the criteria? Because if you're picking a team to play, that is not the team you pick. If you're picking to fit as many superstars in as you can, well, that's a different criteria. Does anyone know the criteria? That'd be the first starting point, I would think.
Well, there's been some interesting rhetoric in the paper today about small forwards that are primarily, that's their role, or specialist wingmen not getting a game.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a different theory on it. I mean, Dustin Martin's in the side, and to me, he is an All-Australian every day of the week. Does he get in instead of a Packley or a Butler? I think as a coach, we've both been coaches. If I'm picking a team, I want Dustin Martin in my side before those guys. Are they a better forward pocket? Maybe they are. But I would say if you left Dustin Martin permanently inside the forward 50, I'm pretty sure he'd kick as many goals as Butler would, that's for sure.
Yeah, true. And again, there's no debating the quality of player in the team, but it's just, I guess, which angle you want to take on it. You're picking a team you would pick per position, or just getting as many superstars in as possible. So it's all subjective. You can never win on these things. Teams of the decade, teams of the century, there's always debate. No one's ever going to get it completely right. So good banter though.
Rather than going through all the different positions, I'm just going to touch on it briefly. I think there was 4 or 5 players that I consider lucky. I think Darcy Byrne-Jones, Liam Ryan, I think is very lucky. He's a fantastic player, but with the calibre of small forwards in the league, I think he's very lucky. Taylor Adams, I think he's had a fantastic season for Collingwood, but the players that have missed out, I would say, have arguably had as good, if not better seasons. Players like Oliver, Fife, even Pendlebury. He missed a few games, but the games he played, he was sensational. Zach Merritt from Essendon, even Luke Parker from the Swans. Played in a low side, but his season was fantastic. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't win the Sydney Swans Best and Fairest, either him or Jake Lloyd. I thought Gawn was lucky. You're an ex-ruckman. Nat Nui in the side, Gawn. This fascination with picking 2 ruckmen. I mean, I personally would have gone for someone like Blitzarves who could pinch hit in the rough for 10, 5 or so minutes a quarter and play in other positions. You're a ruckman. I never remember you going off the ground.
Yeah, a little bit different level, I reckon, Ash. But yeah, look, the thing is that you're right. You pick a team as a coach, you'd have that flexibility. The selectors getting caught up too much on stats and not impact. If you want to talk about, Pendlebury in the games, he's missed too many games, they might not have picked him, but you can't have any more impact than he's had in the games he's played. Are they getting swept up in the amount of stats instead of impact, do you think?
Well, they could be. I mean, if you want to look at stats, then I think Todd Goldstein's very unlucky to miss out. He had more clearances than any other ruckman. He was top 5 clearances in the league. He had the most hit-outs in the league. I think he suffers a bit because he played in a side that was down the bottom of the ladder. And Nick Naitanui has got this glow about him that whenever he does something, it seems to be, it's utterly fantastic. I mean, he's a very good player, but I think sometimes we get lost in some of his brilliance. And he's an 8 possession a game man. But I think Goldstein was unlucky. I think Shepherd was lucky. Other players were unlucky. As I said, I think Blitzars was really unlucky because if you're picking a team to play, and Rick comes back to the point you were saying about what's the selection criteria, Blitzars every day. He can play wing, he can play back, he can play mobile ruckman, he can do lockdown defender, he can do intercept mark, he can do it all. I think that's a value to a team that plays it and go on.
The highlight reel of Nick Nat's huge and it catches everyone's imagination. But for mine as a ruckman, you've got to have all them tap outs. You've got to have that these days, you've got to have that ground game, which he's got in the immediate vicinity. But you also got to get around the ground and take a lot of marks to be the premier ruckman, in my opinion. But, they're all great players. And as I said, we could debate this sideways, upways, and get a different outcome depending which angle you want to look at it. So they're all interesting topics, mate. And I'm sure we'll get some feedback from people we know and probably some people we don't know.
Well, the Collingwood supporters will be jumping all over me. Dave Connell, Benny Chapman, Scotty Condon, they'll be all over me for saying that Adams is a bit lucky. But I think Maynard's equally unlucky. I thought he had a great season. I think the second last game he played, he botched a couple of kick-ins, and I think that might have gone against him. And I think he had a great year. I think he was unlucky. But I agree with you. I think the most unlucky is Wiedering. I can't remember him being beaten all year. I did an All-Australian side about halfway through in the year, and I battled over him and Darcy Moore, and I left Wiedering out of the side, and I reckon he only got better. I can't remember him being beaten. He intercept marks. He shuts down quality players. His kicking is good. I think he's the glaring omission.
I can give you some light.
Sorry, mate, what were you going to say?
On Maynard. I can shed some light on why I think Maynard probably missed.
Yep.
When he kicks in from full back, on too many occasions he doesn't go outside the square, and he's cost me 3 same game multis. Right? Possession. So for mine, leave him out.
He needs to go to the Luke McDonald School of Kicking In. That's what he does. He's a king of taking one step outside the square. That's why he gets 20. I'm not going to go there because Daniel Carroll will kill me if I talk too much about Luke McDonald. Speaking about Wiedering, let's get on to Carlton. You're a Carlton man.
Yeah.
What does Carlton need going forward?
Mate, to be honest with you, I'm quite bullish. I've been quite bullish about Carlton for probably 3 seasons, knowing they were still a fair way off. I've had a few debates with other Carlton supporters, and I've said we're not that far away. We're a long way away, but we're not that far away. I think we've built a pretty good spine of young blokes, as long as we can keep them. And I'm just sort of looking around here. Well, I'll give you probably a list of 16 or 17 guys that I think could play in our next premiership, right? If they get it right. There's a lot of shit stuff to go in between now and then. I look at the likes of Cripps, Walsh, Mackay, Curnow, Fisher, Kennedy, Petreski-Seaton, Doherty, Wiedering. DeConing really excites me as a ruckman.
Yeah, he looks real good.
He's got a long way to go, but super athletic and does it all over the ground, which is what I was talking about before. He needs to do more of it, but he'll get there. I rate Silvani now that he doesn't have to play a key role. Before he got injured in last season, he really come into his own playing that lesser role. And I think he can be one of those players. Gibbons has been good. You got Williamson, Plowman, Pitney, Cunningham. And if McGovern pulls his finger out and gets back to what he could have been, now those 17 players at average age of 23. Right? Yes, there's still a lot of young guys I haven't mentioned that can improve. And as we well know, Ash, you can have a good side, but you're getting that pieces right to get a premiership is a needle in a haystack stuff. But we need to start producing next year. They need to be in finals next year. If they don't, well, then all that build-up's sort of well behind schedule for mine. So that next step's the hard one. Right? They've sort of started to become competitive now, which they weren't for a long while. But we've got a long way to go. But I think we've got the basis to get there if they get the next couple of drafts right.
Well, I think those sides that are sort of 6 to 15 on the ladder, if they're not moving forward, they're going backwards. And Carlton fits into that bracket. I really love Harry Mackay up forward. I think with him and Curnow in the same team, the Koenig is the third tall, pinch hitting in the ruck. Pitney's a soldier. They'd love another ruckman. Obviously, Cruiser being injured all the time and now retiring hurts. I think there's pretty good down back, a rebounding defender or an intercept mark. They need one of those. Maybe McGovern can become that. I'm not the greatest McGovern fan. Someone like Shannon Hearn would be perfect. Obviously, he's too old to move to another club now, but that ilk of player who can do both would be perfect for someone like Carlton. And they definitely need another midfielder. And I think they should target someone from Essendon. I think Essendon's got 7 or 8 midfielders that are very similar. Shield, Merritt, McGrath, Heppel, Smith, Parrish, Langford, the list goes on. I think they should target one of them, try and get one of them in to help Cripps. I think Walsh has been fantastic. I agree with you. I think Carlton's not far away, but they really need to be aggressive in the trade situation.
They need specifics. They need specifics. They need to say Walsh and Cripps. I think Walsh, his work rate, and it's no coincidence that when Judd was at his peak, he was the hardest worker at the footy club. Talent gets you so far, but his work rate is amazing. Like the ground he covers that kid. And so him and Cripps still need help. You're right. They need another gun in there, and obviously you need depth of rotation. A little bit more class by foot from half back, which is why Patricia Seaton's gone there. We need someone on the other, just that touch of class going forward of 50 off half back and getting that rebound.
You say that class off half back. That's why I was really surprised Simpson's finished. I've heard that he'd had enough, but I would have been keeping Simpson in front of Betts. But anyway, we could debate that all day long.
I'm a massive Simpson fan, massive. But
sorry, say that again.
I'm a massive Simpson fan. He's a superstar, courage. I've actually met him and had a photo taken with him. I put my arm around him. It felt like I was having my arm around by effort. He was that thin. Yep. His courage he shows is amazing. And I've watched him pretty closely, and he's still serviceable, but his weight of possessions have diminished considerably this year. So there was an argument for him to keep going, but I can sort of see why he hasn't. But I think Betts shouldn't have kept going, unless he's there purely as a coaching role.
If he took the kick-ins, his possessions would improve. All right, we'll leave it there, Muzz, for the AFL. I want to introduce a new segment, or a first up segment. Rants from the recliner. Hopefully you enjoy it, and give me some feedback on what you think. Thank you. Welcome to our first rant. Today's rant is about some of the anomalies in football, and the one we're going to focus on today is the deliberate out-of-bounds rule. So this rule baffles me. I do not understand that the premise of this rule is that the player must try and do all he can to keep the ball in play. You have players kicking the ball sometimes 40, 50 metres, the ball bounces right angles, goes out of bounds, and the little man in green runs over with a big swoosh of the arm, the crowd roars and he gives it deliberate out of bounds. Hopefully, by having a look at the next video clip, this gives a good example of what I mean.
To the members' wing, Burgoyne hoping for a good bounce, got it, Guthrie got hold of him, stolen by Kelly. No one forward of the footy here for Geelong. He's in trouble, Kelly. That's all he can do. Look at the Hawthorn players run back. 3 of them. Guthrie, the only one that's got a chance. Oh, no way. No way. He paid deliberate. That gets the right angle. Unbelievable. That umpire cannot pay that kick. Oh, no. That bounced the right angle, that kick there. That is an all-time low. Boy, oh.
The next thing that annoys me with the deliberate out-of-bounds rule is when you're hard up against the boundary, you've got pressure coming from the inside. If you kick the ball too much towards the centre of the ground, it'll get smothered. So what you do is you just dribble the ball along the boundary line. Sometimes the ball goes 25, 30 metres. The contour of the ball makes the ball sometimes go towards the boundary line, and the umpire plays deliberate. To me, this is against the spirit of the game. The player's sole intention is not to get the ball out of bounds. It is to get the ball out of the defensive area, and players should be allowed to do this. This is not, however, the anomaly that I'm most concerned with. Those decisions, the long bomb and the dribble along the boundary, in my opinion, are both wrong. But why, when a player is leading and he's got his defender on him and a player intercepts and he could take the mark or spoil, but sometimes they spoil the ball 25 metres over the boundary line. They punch it. When there's no pressure on them, they could easily take the mark. Why is this not considered deliberate out of bounds? When the player's sole intention, in this case, is to, in fact, get the ball out of bounds. It's an anomaly of the rule. I don't like it. I wish I'd change it. I wish I'd get rid of it because we're all confused. Thank you. Rant over. All right. Next thing I want to look at, Muzza, is let's get onto some serious stuff. Let's start talking about you and me. Enough of this Carlton AFL rubbish. I played with you in the 97 Premiership for Glenroy. Before we get onto that, any stories from your... you must have some stories from your footy career. Have you got a zinger for us? Or a bazinga story, as Sheldon Cooper says in Big Bang Theory?
Look, no pressure there, Ash, but the problem is, as you'd be well aware of, that a lot of the really, really good stories from football change rooms and football functions and football clubs in general are probably not for general consumption. Not that they're necessarily...
Murray, no one's going to see this video, mate. Everyone's
no, you're right.
Past us, so don't worry.
I guess probably one of the funniest stories, and we'll probably have to mask a few of the details, was the year you coached the club to a premiership. And this goes to, I guess, as much as how much above the shoulders the football really is, 95% above the shoulders. And the club going really well, and then lost 3 games in a row. So we decided to put a bit of a function together because the boys just weren't enjoying their footy.
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
So let's just say we decided to get some guest speakers down on a Tuesday night and get the boys to enjoy themselves, get lifts to training, get on the pizzas and get on the beers, as Daniel says all the time, Mr. Andrews, and just get them enjoying their footy. So we tried to get Kevin Sheedy. The boys thought they were getting him to see Kevin. 3 guest speakers, I believe, on the night. None of them were Kevin Sheedy, but all very, very well received. Needless to say, by the wee hours of the morning, everyone had an excellent Tuesday night. The boys had lightened up. I think it went on from that point not to lose another game.
We didn't lose another game. No, so
another game.
I don't know whose a bit like Daniel Andrews. I don't know whose idea it was, but whoever it was, they were genius.
I don't recall.
I knew we were in trouble when I rolled up to the training because I had no idea of it. I was a senior coach and I just left it in the hands of the powers that be. I knew we were in trouble when I rolled up to the game and all the windows had been covered in black plastic. I thought this is not a very good sign at all. But it was a great night. And look, I've spoken to many players and they reckon it was the catalyst for us to go and win the premiership that year. So, you know.
The guest speakers, they were there for us, not for anyone outside the room. So we're very in-house when it comes to that sort of stuff.
All right. 1997, you and I were lucky enough to play in the Glenroy Premiership. It was a premiership that came from nothing, really. My memory of it is 2 or 3 rounds out, or 3 rounds out from the end of the year, we had to beat Tullamarine. We were 4th, they were 5th. We were a game and percentage in front of them. My memory is that we got absolutely hammered by Tullamarine, over 100 points. The next week we played Duda Stars, who were on top, undefeated. They smashed us by 80 points. I remember Hura playing on a guy named Dave Sullivan, who was a terrific full forward at the time. They had a star-studded team. But I remember leaving that game. It was one of the most brutal games I played in. We lost, but we certainly left a mark on Duda Stars that they knew that if they played us again, that it was going to be physical. We had a very young side. We had guys like Damien Caulfield, Kane Westcombe, Wayne Taylor, Corey Laws, Michael Gibbard. A lot of our side was so young, but they were tough. And we really took it up to Dudas physically that day. We gave away about 10 50-metre penalties, which obviously wasn't good, but it was a bit of a short-term loss for a long-term gain. Next week, I remember we played Maribyrnong Park at Glenroy in true Glenroy fashion. I remember this. I was talking to Joseph Fenya. He doesn't remember this. I don't know if you remember it, but I remember us having a truck, a big semi-trailer with music blaring from it during the game. It was going to be our last game. Sorry, what was that?
I remember the planning of it, not just the day.
Hey?
I remember the planning of the truck being there and setting that all up and make sure there was car spaces for it. And I remember that clearly. Yes, you're right.
Well, we thought it was going to be the last game, and we had to beat Maribyrnong, who were 3rd. and we needed Tulla to lose to West Meadows, who were second bottom or something, and that wasn't going to happen. Anyway, I remember it was a very windy day, and I hadn't done much, which was pretty typical for that time in my career. But I kicked a couple in the last quarter. And we managed to just get over the line by a couple of goals, and we came off the ground. And these are in the days before Twitter apps and EDFL apps and all this sort of stuff. And word came through that West Meadows had got up and beaten by Tulla by 10 goals, and we were in.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we were in. So the next week we play Maribyrnong in the first final. Now, I'll see if you remember this.
Yeah.
People watching today's football will find this bizarre. The two semi-finals, us and Maribyrnong and Hadfield and Dooders, were played on the same day at the same ground, one after the other.
Yep.
Because we beat Maribyrnong, and as I was leaving the ground, a Hadfield player kicked the goal in the first minute, booted the footy over the grandstand at Windy Hill into the road. And I thought, oh, well, I'll come out and get the ball. And no one did. So I just scooped it up, and in the car I went with the game footage. So that was pretty good. Then the next week we played Dooders in the prelim. We hadn't lost a game all year, but got beat by Hadfield in the second semi. True to my current form, I didn't get a kick. And for the first time at Glenroy, and it just shows what a perceptive coach Lyndon Westcombe was. I mean, people say he was hard and tough, and he was. And you played under him a long time, as did I. But the man knew his stuff, and it was a bit wet and a bit greasy. And I remember sitting on the bench in the second half, and it was the most tense game. You could probably, do you remember anything about that game?
Yeah, I do. I remember a lot, everything, pretty much all you've spoken about so far. Maybe not in as much detail, but that game we went there, nothing to lose. What had actually happened there, Ash, and why we were in such a position and not making the finals? Because we had all those players, you had Nick Gibbard, Corey Laws, Kane Westcombe, Damien Caulfield, Peter Mitchell, Terry Ellis, all come up from an under-18 premiership 2 years prior, all as bottom age kids in 88 against that valley. Now, they come through and they've been coached by Lenny, and it's fair to say Lenny was very hard, but not on them blokes. A few of them, not all of them, a few of them pretty much phoned it in for the best part of 3/4 of the season. And what changed is us older blokes kept doing what we done. But for 6 weeks of the season, they got their heads out their backsides and really had a crack. And that gave us the run, the carry, the ability to complement what we already had and get the form to turn right around. So come that day, we led by as much as 5 goals that day. We dead set, didn't give them a sniff. Then to top it off, then they rallied in the last quarter. They got level with us in the last quarter, I don't know if you recall that. And everyone just expected them to go away, only for us to then, with the run of all them young guys and everyone else doing their bit, get another couple of goals and get into a grand final. So it was the challenge then became, because the celebrations were pretty hard that day and night, had to refocus for the next game. That's where Lyndon comes into his own and got us ready for the next week.
We win the prelim, I think by about 7 points or something. It was a low. We go into the grand final, play Hadfield. They've only lost 2 games for the year, both due to stars. They got Ken Ingram, they got Billy Kakua, Joey Gambin, superstar team. Murray Nilsson, one of the greatest ruckmen in the EDFL history, lines up in the centre. Terry Ellis is in the ruck. Is that right or not? Am I remembering that right?
Correct.
Centreman in the grand final.
Correct.
And,
well, that's again Lyndon Westcombe being ahead of his time, because the Sydney Swans started doing it about 4 years later. And what
you're calling yourself Adam Goods?
I've been called worse. So with Terry Ellis trailing in behind, only for me to veer off because they think I'm going to run straight through because I haven't even looked at the footy. And as long as I don't make contact with them, then Terry just put it down my throat or someone else's throat. And it worked a treat. The only free kick I given away for the whole year was in the grand final. I actually just clipped the ruckman on my way through. So it worked really well. And Terry was a great young fellow at the time and half point mental, mad as a cut snake, which is great because he just jumped into the ruckman. But the Sydney Swans started doing about 3 or 4 years later. And it's amazing. He's always ahead of his time, Lyndon.
Well, Lyndon, there were calls for me to, well, not from the players that I remember, but certainly from the local community. Let's just say that. I thought maybe I should have been out of the side and Kane should play full forward. But Lyndon was very strong on the opinion that while I was in the side, it was a lot harder for me being the full forward, having the best defender for the opposition, and that allowed Kane you know, if Damien Caulfield had the second best, allowed Kane to have the third. And there was no greater impact than that in the grand final when Kane absolutely dominated the first quarter. If he had a kick straight, the game would have been over. I think he won 3 and 1 out of bounds and was dominating. And just before quarter time, the Hadfield runner came out and moved my opponent. Can't remember his first name, but his last name, I think, was Musgrove. He's a very good player. I played him a few times. He got moved on to Kane, and I won't throw our old mate under the bus, but someone else got moved on to me. And I went to Linny at quarter time after he'd given his quarter time address, and we were well in the game. I think it was pretty close. And I said, listen, Linny, I reckon I've got a good match up here. I hadn't had a kick for 2 weeks. I said, just give me 10 minutes, 1 out. And he pushed everybody up the ground. I kicked a couple in the second quarter, and we were away. And that was, you know, that just, he was right in that. And it had nothing to do with me. It could have been anyone, but he was right in his thinking that Kane was playing well, but he was playing well on the third defender as a young kid. Kane actually went out of the game for the rest of the game. He didn't do much, but his first quarter was electric. We went on to win the game.
If you want to wind that back a bit, Ash.
Sorry?
Just wind back a couple of steps.
Yeah.
Lyndon was a great supporter of yours, but you were also told Thursday night training, if it's raining, you're not playing. You remember that?
I do, and I wanted to bring that up. I have 2 stories from that grand final, if you can indulge me. The first one is, it's true, on the Thursday night I got called in to selection. Lyndon was there, and there's a couple of other people. I can't remember who they were. One may have been Aussie, but I can't remember. And basically they said to me, you're in the side. I had no inclination that I'd be out. I mean, I'd kicked 60 or 70 goals that year. I had been poor in the prelim. Basically they said, you're in the side, but if it rains, we're going to drop you. And I was stunned. Anyway, I thought, oh, geez, this is not good. I better get home and watch the weather. Anyway, there's something else funny about that. I can't remember who it was, but one of the people in selection said, in those days, Glen and I we used to get paid for playing in the finals, which has now gone out of local footy. And they said, listen, Ash, you're on, I think I was on $120 a game or something like that. And they said, we're not going to pay you for the grand final. Instead, we're going to give you $100 a goal. And I said, well, it's not going to make me play any better. I'm still going to try my hardest. It's a grand final. Anyway, long story short, we play the next day. I don't know if you remember this, but I was driving somewhere and I received a phone call from Murray Nilsson.
I remember it.
And do you remember this?
Yeah.
He says, have a guess where I am. And I said, I know, mate. Where are you? He said, I'm in the middle of Windy Hill. The sun is shining. The grass looks magnificent. I've looked at the weather. You're playing, big fella. And I was so rapt. So we get the game. Long story short, we win the grand final. Certain bloke goes, all right. Do you remember how many I kicked, Murray?
I'll say 6 so you can correct me.
7. I've told
yeah, there you go.
It's funny because whenever I've been out, I've bumped into people and they'll say, oh, was that grand final when you kicked 10? And I go, yeah, I kicked 10. Oh, you kicked 9? I go, yeah, I kicked 9. But if anyone says under 7, I go, oh, it was 7. So anyway, I kicked 7. Hadn't given the money one bit of thought. This is true story. We had the celebration on the ground. 3 minutes after the game, I'm in the rooms and someone comes up. I can't remember who it was. Puts the 120 in my hand and says, well played, big fella. See you later. No 700 for the big dog. Did not happen.
Well, contract's a contract. You've got legalities.
So, anyway, just before we finish on our Glenroy days, you and I were lucky enough to play our last game together against Hadfield in 2005, I think it was.
2005, yep. Around 700.
Johnny Farnham, you'd had about 6 retirements prior to that.
Yeah, they don't stick always. They don't always stick initially. I think I had 4. I had 4 at the end, 4 seasons I was done. And you know what?
I wonder if you remember. Do you remember how many I kicked in that game?
No, I don't. I remember me not getting many kicks.
Now, you won't remember. I kicked 8 in that game, right? So that's my memory of it. That's why
I couldn't get a kick.
Hey?
That's why I couldn't get a kick. You had it all the time.
Now, you won't remember this story. This is true, though. Late in the last quarter, I took a mark about 35-40 out, lining up for the 9th, and I had a little look over the shoulder and I thought, there's Muzzer. He hasn't had a kick all day. It's his last game. And I gave you a little pass. And the Glenroy faithful, they were up and about there. This is our moment. Big Muzzer's going to kick a goal. And do you remember what you did?
Yeah. Oh, I don't remember what I did, but obviously I didn't kick the goal.
You fluffed it. Where's the Ben Stratton moment? Kicking a goal in the last minute. You fluffed it, you kicked the point, and we were flat as a tack.
Mate, I was injured. I've done the tendon in my little finger laying a tackle. And I said to the boys, I said, mate, you're going to believe it. First tackle I ever laid. And they got into me. They, oh, that'd be right. Yeah. Don't tackle, don't chase. I said, mate, I found you don't have to tackle. The guy's got the foot in your hands. So it's just set him up.
That was a great day. We got the guard of honour as we walked off. Hadfield on one side, Glenroy on the other, and it was.
I think that was to make sure we didn't come back, Ash.
Sorry?
They put the guard of honour there to make sure we didn't come back.
Just before we get on,
it was a great day.
I'm going to let you tell us a bit about being a president of the current day. I want to tell another story about our mate Glenn Johnson, my cousin, your mate. Right?
About being president? Did you want me to talk about being president?
One night, you, me and John were out at a nightclub called The Tunnel.
Hang on, well, I just check where Cheryl is.
John's done his usual trick. He's hooked up with some young lass in the corner. He's got it all under control. So you and I don't know why, but we're on the dance floor and both of us can't bust a move. And we get into a bit of a fracas, if you remember, with a couple of blokes. I can't remember how many it was, but we were definitely outnumbered. Anyway, this story is humorous because I thought we were in a bit of strife. Anyway, luckily for us, I had a bit of a connection with the bouncers, and they came over and turfed these blokes out, which you say is a couple of guys we actually played with down the track. But that's not the funny part of the story. The best part of the story is, so we've had a bit of a push and a shove, and things got a bit willing for a minute. And I went over to Jono, who has not moved, by the way, from his chair with this girl. And I said, Jono, did you see what just happened? He said, yeah, I saw. I said, why didn't you do anything? He said, you and Braz had it all under control, mate. And that was typical Jono. We're in the middle of a fight. He's busy. But
couldn't have been further from the truth,
hey?
By the way. It couldn't have been further from the truth what he said. He had nothing under control.
No, we didn't have it. No, I thought we were in a bit of strife. Muzz, you've been the president for a few years. Talk to me about some of the issues facing local footy clubs like Glenroy at the moment in local footy.
Like, I think that stuff's pretty universal, Ash, to all local footy clubs. The biggest issues today are probably issues that have always been the case. It's funds and it's volunteers. But unfortunately today, the amount of work that's being heaped upon clubs for correct work practices and the extra paperwork you've got to do. And I know that's a better way of running clubs with all these checks and measures and all that, but it just adds and adds and adds to the volunteers' workload. And volunteers are like hen's teeth, mate, these days. And if you give them too much to do, it burns them out, and every club's in the same boat. That's the biggest issue. The other one is the points and the salary cap. I love the concept. The points are unavoidable. The salary cap is unenforceable, unfortunately. I don't know what they do about that, because there's still, some clubs just do whatever they want. And I don't understand it. It just takes away from local footy. I don't know where the pride and achievement is if you're not developing your own at local footy. So it's a bit of a problem. But mate, it hasn't changed this cock and egg. There's always too few doing too much. But I think local footy is a fantastic outlet and connection point for community. And mate, there's money in footy. We always got paid when we played. But I tell you what, since you finish and you get to your 40s and now I'm in your 50s, not once have I ever spoken to a bloke I played footy with or anyone about local footy about the extra $50 or the $50 less I got. It's about the fantastic people you meet, the memories and the banter on the footy field, the training. It's irreplaceable, that stuff, and it's a lot of great life lessons. Footy, I believe, working in a team, you get told to pull your head in pretty quick. You don't get ahead of yourself too quick in local footy, or at least not at our club. I assume most clubs are the same, but mate, it's very rewarding. It's a lot of hard work, but mate, for mine, the things I enjoy the most, having done the juniors, my kids have come through, seeing some of them kids go on and play senior footy for the club, and ultimately some of them playing premierships, and that is the absolute. You sit back and go, it's my state with Adrian McDonald, first year president. We get a premiership. My wife's treasurer had been for 10 years. My two sons playing it. I mean, you don't get memories like that in any other area of your life. So, mate, the Glenroy Football Club, I owe a lot to the Glenroy Football Club. Just the memories that I don't believe would have got anywhere else. So, and the people you meet. So, mate, it is a lot of work. And people say, why would you do it? Well, you do it because you love it. Sometimes you do question whether it's worth it, but you get days like that and you go, you know what? Yeah, it'll do me.
Yeah, that must have been amazing to be involved as president with your two sons playing in a premiership. That's almost the pinnacle.
It was. It was. It was probably on the back of my most nervous day at football ever. It was when Tanner was 16, my eldest son, played in a grand final, senior grand final against Northern Saints. Now, the Northern Saints boys don't mind mixing it up. He's a 16-year-old skinny kid, and I'm on the sidelines 150 metres away having to watch this all unfold. It was a little nerve-wracking, Ash, I must say. But he got through. The boys looked after him. And, so it's just, it's great memories, mate. Great memories.
Well, there was one thing about Glenroy. There were things that, that weren't always great. But if ever there was a young fella playing in a team, all the senior players made sure that he was protected, that's for sure. Look, great to chat to you. Before we go, there's just one more thing that I want to touch on. In the last couple of days, the passing of an absolute legend of world and Australian sport in Dean Jones. An entertainer, he was just my hero growing up. He was just such a great player. He changed the way one-day games were played. He scored fast early in the game. He pushed the ball around. He pushed hard for twos and threes. He ran the fielders ragged. And he was just a larger-than-life character. And, the cricketing world in particular, but the sporting world is a worse place for him passing during the week. If I just tell a story, I actually did play a game against Dean Jones. This is not really a Dean Jones story, but he was involved in the game. I was played a few games of District First for North Melbourne, and we were playing against Melbourne. And Melbourne got their regulation, 4 for 360 declared, as Melbourne did in those days. They had about 8 state players on their side. And they declared, and John Shannon was the captain of North Melbourne, and we get in the room and he says, does anyone want to go night watchman? Melbourne declared, about 12 overs to go. And me being a moron, batting at 7, I said, yeah, I'll go night watchman, no worries, Shannon. So he says, right, you're at 3. So Shannon goes out to bat. I walk up the grandstand in North Melbourne, didn't even sit down. First ball, Brad Williams, who at the time was the quickest bowler in Australia and close to the quickest bowler in the world, knocks John Shannon over first ball. So out I go. I'm wandering out. Anyway, I get out there, and you have to see the picture. It was amazing. The leg stump and the off stump was standing there. There's no middle stump. It had gone. The umpire was off the ground. He'd split the stump, and I've got the slip cordon of Michael Sholly, who was a district cricket legend, Dean Jones, Brad Hodge, Warren Ayres, Darren Ramshaw, all these, Steve McCook, all these blokes who played Victoria, and they're into me. If he hits you in the head, Manning, you're dead. If he hits you in the arm, you're going to have a fractured arm for the neck. You're going to be in hospital for the neck. It was just so intimidating playing these. And Dean Jones was just giving it to me. Anyway, luckily for me, Brad Williams pitched the first one up, and I somehow got some bat on it. Went flying back past him for 4. So I take off to start running. The ball goes into the boundary. I'm walking back, pretty happy with myself. Well, do you think that didn't encourage the boys a bit? There's not going to be any more pitched up to you. You're going to be copping bounces, blah, 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 blah. They were into me. It was so intense. There was not one fielder in front of the wicket. In fact, when I hit the floor, I think the short leg had to chase it because Brad Williams was coming in off the boundary. He sure as hell wasn't turning around to chase it. So anyway, somehow by the end of the day, I managed to get up the non-strikers end, and a guy named Richard Herman was bowling, who was a quality cricketer, but thank God I didn't have. He was a bit better facing him than Brad Williams. So anyway, by the end of the day, I'd survived the end of the day. But the next week, we had to come back, and as we were walking off the ground, Dean Jones was saying to me, geez, I tell you what, Ash, you wouldn't want it to rain next week. A bit of juice in this pitch. Brad Williams might be a bit hard to face. Anyway, that Friday night, it rained, and I laid in bed awake for a long time. And my best mates at the time were a guy named Chris Smith and Rodney Shields, and they were coming to watch me, and I said, boys, I'm on strike. Don't be late. So they got there for the second ball, Murray. They were late because I was already on the way off. Brad Williams had bowled me a bouncer. I don't know where the hell it went. It hit me somewhere on the glove, up in the air, and I got the best send-off from Dean Jones, Brad Hodge, Warren Ayres and co. It was no good. So that's my memory of Dean Jones. Gone too soon. A great player, a great Australian, and a great cricketer. Muzza, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Oh, just on Dean Jones, mate. He was the prototype of the modern-day cricketer, really, wasn't he? He was the first of his kind, as you say, with the aggression in the field, aggression between the wickets, and the cavalier batting style. And then it flowed into the Test cricket, and that's why when Australia started scoring cricket, and they won all them Tests in a row. So he really revolutionised cricket. So it is sad. But before we go, mate, wish you luck with this. Great idea. I don't know whether we've helped or hindered you today, but it's been good having a chat. Probably a little self-indulgent, but that's what we're here for. Favourite topic, us. But mate, great idea. Bit of banter, bit of feedback. Bit rough around the edges, and that suits us down to the ground. And hopefully it goes well for you, mate. Hopefully some other people can get on here and reminisce about a few things and solve the problems of the sporting world. And remember,
thank you for being
possible.
Sorry, go on.
remember one thing, Ash, what could possibly go wrong?
Thank you, Murray Nilsson, for being our very special first guest. Hopefully people have enjoyed the show. Make sure in the comments you give us some feedback. If it's really negative, ring me so that not everybody can see it. But thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next week, hopefully. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, Ash. Cheers.